Hello, welcome to another episode of Fill the Screens podcast. Today we'll be talking about VHS 99. After experiencing the disappointment of VHS Viral, VHS 94 brought the franchise back to basics. It was pretty refreshing. I was pretty excited to get into this movie. And I'm going to be honest with you, as soon as I start this movie, I kind of groaned. It opens up with these little toys, and it's like someone's talking over them, and they're trying to make like some comedic bits with toys, and it's like almost animation or stop motion, whatever you want to call it. I was like, what in the world is this? In '94, we start off with a SWAT team invading a building, bringing the excitement back. And then they're like, whoa, let's dial it down a bit. Let's do one with a kid playing with toys, and he can like make jokes in between segments. That'll be fun. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. So usually I start off one of these movies talking about the connecting segment or the glue segment. But this movie really does not have one. Again, it's just toys making jokes. Um, there's really not that they weren't that funny. One of them, he was acting like the two soldiers are at war. One of them is a prisoner of war, and he's like, "Yo, can I like have a cigarette?" And the other one's like, "Oh, you're an enemy. We can't be friends." And the guy's like, "Well, why not?" And I don't know. One of them gets like bitten in half by like a toy rabbit or something. I can't remember. I was just dumbfounded that they were doing this. I know I sound angry. I apologize. I should calm down. But yeah, like he was bitten in half by a rabbit, and he's doing like the whole "I can't feel my legs," and it was so bad. But I guess I'm not doing a connecting segment because there really isn't one. There isn't a conclusion or really anything. There comes a point to where a kid walks in and says, "Hey, are you using my camera?" Which at the time he was having two toy soldiers like kiss, and the one kid's like all embarrassed, like, "What? No, no, I don't know what's going on." And then there's like a kid flexing in a mirror, and then the connecting segment kind of stops. Very very odd. Um, Whenever I did the first VHS and the second one, I questioned them, said, do we really need a connecting segment that connects the theme? Do we really need that? Maybe we should just go all segments. And watching this movie, I'm reversing what I said. I very much appreciate the opening or the connecting segments of 1, 2, and 4. Those were fantastic. I mean, 3 was confusing and sometimes didn't make sense. I mean, a lot of times it didn't make sense, but at least they tried. This one, it did not. So yeah, I'm starting this review very harshly on 99, which is the one we're talking about. But I'm being harsh on the whole connecting thing because the toys, that was just dumb. I'll move on from that. Let's talk about the segments. The first segment we got was called Shredding. It's about like a punk rock band. There's like two guys, a girl, and I think it's like a guy who likes to dress up as a girl. They're in a punk rock band, and they want to go to this one place where all female rock band had passed away due to a fire. This segment, all of the characters except one, they're very mean, and I mean like this movie in general, the VHS 99, it's kind of full of a bunch of a-holes. That they're not very likable characters, and a lot of times you're rooting for their demise. This one's no different, except the one kid who they continuously pick on. Like, it's like one prank after another, and they're like faking they're dead. It's like Shelly from Friday the 13th Part 3, except mean-spirited. I didn't get it. I was like, man, why are they even friends or band members? Like, well, if I was this dude, I would walk out. Um, they have their like little show where like their band like plays pranks on each other, and it seems like just all their pranks revolve on the one dude, and they just pile on him like, oh, he's on the toilet, let's open the door, that'll be funny. But yeah, eventually this guy does have enough, and he's like talking about how the spirits will like possess people, and I was kind of interested. I was like, oh, this could go a pretty cool direction. We could get a Night of the Demons type aspect. But it really doesn't go that way. I mean, that character kind of storms out, and then the four members of the dead band, they get resurrected, and they look kind of cool, to be honest. But they don't really do anything with it. They like go up to the other band members and just like rip them apart limb by limb. And by the end, they like go to the stage, and I think they use the band members that they killed, they take their body parts and they put it on their body, and then I think they go to rock out on stage again, and that's the end. And so I was very worried with the connecting segment, and then this one, because this one again, it had potential, but it just didn't really do much with it, and it's kind of giving me vibes of VHS Viral. I was like, oh no, like 94 we did so well, like what are we doing now? That brings me to my next segment, Suicide Bit. It's about a girl who participates in a sorority hazing ritual that releases the supernatural. That's the definition they give there. And this one actually gave me hope. It really did. This girl named Lily, she's really trying to get into the sorority, and of course the sorority girls are mean. It's a common theme in this movie. They tell her that they need to put her in a coffin and bury her alive for 24 hours because that would be hilarious. Who wouldn't do that? But I know hazing stuff does get a bit far in real life, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, that would never happen. I mean, weird stuff happens. You see kids dying of alcohol poisoning. I remember on the news one day when I was a kid, there was these kids who wanted to join a frat house or something, and they were like smearing poop all over those college students, and they're like crying out in public, and they're humiliated. And I know that's not the worst they go. I've watched documentaries. Like, there's some gross stuff that goes on, but burying someone for 24 hours, pretty crazy. Now, I don't think these mean girls were actually going to go through with it, because they were outside of the grave and they're dancing around. But to make it even like worse, they give her like this little box, and they said, open this up if you feel like you're in trouble. And the girl, like, she starts to panic a little bit, and she opens it up, and like 1,000 spiders like crawl out. And I will say, like, the claustrophobic aspect of this segment was really well done, because you got the little handheld camera in there with her, so you're just seeing her in a very tight spot, and like the spiders are crawling all over the place. I do not wish to be in her position. That is awful. To make matters worse, it starts raining, and when it starts raining, like, some of the water starts to like flood into the casket, and like cops show up, which scare off the mean girls, and they're like, well, we're just gonna hide for a little bit. Well, they end up coming back at 7 a.m, so those girls just called it a night, which is completely awful, and they act shocked when something bad happens. But I will say the one bad thing about this segment is because whenever they bury her alive, they told her a story about this girl who wanted to join the sorority, and she died, and now she like tries to come back and have friends in the afterlife, and they're like, she's gonna get you when you're in that casket. And one of the girls is like, oh, she's just messing around. Well, no, the dead girl does come back, and it is pretty scary at first, because again, there's spiders in the casket, there's water leaking in, and this girl, she's in the casket full of water that's buried alive. She can't open it, and now there's like a demon zombie girl like breaking into the casket. So initially, like, it's pretty scary. It's like, oh man, that would be awful. But when the zombie girl gets into the casket, it looks pretty corny. It looks like something you'd buy from Party City, cheap Party City. So I will say that is the one down aspect of this segment, but it is nice at the end. Lily gets revenge on all the girls in the sorority club. She puts them in caskets, and brings her little friend with her, and they take care of those mean sorority girls. So I mean, this one was pretty good, and it kind of got me like, okay, we're back in the game. Like, I like what we're doing here. Hopefully we stick right on this track. Which brings me to the next segment. The next segment is called Ozzy's Dungeon. A TV show host endures an obstacle course inspired by his own show. That is what Google gives us. So when this segment started, it starts with this game show. There's this host, and if you are a kid of the 90s, you might remember a show called Legends of the Hidden Temple. It was on Nickelodeon. It looked just like what they had set up. They did pretty well kind of imitating it. And I remember, like, it was almost like a little kid Survivor. Like, whenever these kids were like climbing mountains and climbing these different things and jumping in the slime and water and all that, you'd kind of hear like a Hooba choppa, hooba choppa. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering, but that's just kind of what my little kid memory is telling me. Um, I remember when I was watching it, like it kind of scared me as a show because there's a part to where if the kids hit a wrong button, like these like weird Indian or tribal people that are like zombified, they'll come out and like grab them and like pull them away in the game. And little kid me is like, oh my god, did they just die? Like what happens to them when they drag them off? And obviously, behind scenes they weren't hurting kids. But as a little kid, that's kind of what I feared. I'm like, that would be terrifying. I would never want them to grab me. And whenever this segment started with it, like this little imitation, I was kind of like, ooh, we might have something like really good here. And instead, what we get, and that like this takes like turns. This segment, like it starts off with Legends of the Hidden Temple, and then like the host brings this one girl. I'm spacing her name. But she kept like saying she's from Detroit, and the host is like, "Oh, from Detroit," and he's like kind of mocking her, for the audience's pleasure. Like it's almost like Jeff Probst in Survivor, where he gets sassy. This dude's doing that like times 20. I mean, there's a part where the girl says that we drove all the way from Detroit, and he's like, "You drove? What? Could you not afford to fly?" But anyways, they get to like this little obstacle course, and they're going, and there's like this boy who's competing against her who's like twice her size, and they go through like this like little tunnel, and eventually like the girl like crawls out, and the boy like pulls on her leg, and her leg just snaps in half. Like it is gnarly. Blood goes everywhere. And the host is like, "Oh, she's got a boo boo," and like blood squirting out everywhere. It reminded me of Adult Swim, like some random clip you'd see on Adult Swim and go, "What in the world did I just watch?" One of the girl dancers to the show like throws up everywhere. It just takes a very very weird turn. The girl's mom, who's in the crowd, who already looks a little ticked off because of the things he's saying, which understandably so, she gets up and like tries to stop the game, but there's like security like holding her back, and she's like screaming. And then it like cuts to like later. And what we cut to later is we are in the girl's home, and the girl's mom, she kidnapped the host who's like in a cage, and she's like, "Oh, we're gonna get even now." And she's like talking trash to the host. Once it got to this part, I'm like, what are we doing? Like with Legends of the Hidden Temple to Adult Swim, and now this is like a Saw bit. Very, very weird. She like puts like weird raw meat in his face, which makes him throw up, and they're like hurting him. They got like spikes on a helmet, and the boy like headbutts his stomach, which is making him bleed. She's threatening him with these chemicals and like acid. And it's just like it's this weird setup to where she tried to imitate the show in her own home, but it looks like very low budget and very not well done, which is on purpose because the mom made it. But whenever they're about to kill him, he's like, "I can take you back to the temple. Like, I can make things right." And the mom's like, okay. And so they end up going back to like the on-set, even though the show got canceled. Like, the set piece is still there. And he takes them, and it's so, so weird, because then, like, once we go to this bit, like, it's almost like we go to something from, like, Late Night with the Devil, where, like, things just, like, don't make sense, and it's weird, and, like, he takes them back to the set piece, which is an actual cave, and, like, the girl co-host that he had back when the show was on, she's literally still in the cave, and she just, like, kind of, like, greets them as they, like, walk in. And then there's like this an obese, like monster looking person. It looks like the infected from When Evil Lurks, like that big fat dude who's like just gross everywhere. It looks like that. And they like go up to it, and he's like, "Okay, you better make this wish good, because it's gonna come true." And the little girl like goes in front of the monster and like makes a wish. And then this like gigantic monster pops out of that person's stomach, and like just spits acid all over her family, kills her own family, kills like everyone in that cave, and then it does like a freeze frame on her face, and she's just like smiling, and it's just like, why would you wish that? To like get it? The mom's probably abusive, but by the end of it all, I was just like, what in the world? Like, I wish they would have took it. It seemed like just so I wish the focus and the aim was more on the game itself. Like, the more they compete, like, there's like some evil entity, like, in the game. Like, think of like supernatural Squid Games or something. I don't know. Um, but I didn't really like the direction they took it. I didn't like the whole Saw aspect of her making the host compete and all this weird stuff going back to the show after it's been canceled. And there's this big fat entity that grants wishes. It was so weird. I did not care for this segment, which put me back into a doubtful mindset of where this movie was going. So I was like, man, I hope the next segment can rebound it because there's no connecting segment that I can hope for. So all I have is two more segments I can rely on. The next segment is called Gonkers. Okay, and this is just basically about teenage boys. I mean, what Google says, voyeuristic teenagers discover the truth about their neighbor. It's basically about these teenage boys who they find like their next door neighbor girl is like really hot and they just want to spend their afternoons just staring at her, whether she's in the swimming pool. They say she washes her car every single day. And when she does, they watch. You know, these boys, they are creepy. That they are. What they're doing's not right. But I will say there are parts in this segment that did make me laugh. You know, kind of the banter between the boys when they weren't being like super creepy. Some of the banter was pretty funny. There's a part where a boy like snaps his wrist and he like doesn't even know that anything's wrong. He's like, "Oh my god, that's not normal," and he has to get a cast. And I will say the little brother Brady. Brady is very likable. He's like kind of nerdish in a way. The older brother won't let him participate in the group. He goes out in his roller skates, can barely skate, and then the next door neighbor girl like invites him inside. It is very nice, and she asks him to do something like on her computer. And then the group of boys are like, "Hey, you need to put like a spy cam on her computer, or, you know, do some nerdy hack thing to where we can see her when she's on the computer." And Brady's like, "I don't know, boys," and they're like, "Oh, come on, you can be part of the gang." So they like peer pressure him into it. So Brady goes and does it. You know, they like accept him into the group. And I will say, like, while all this is going on, like, I was interested. I was like, this could go a lot of cool ways. It really could. And there's a part to where, when she gets her computer dropped off, I forgot to mention this earlier, the delivery boy, the UPS man, which I don't even know if UPS was around in '99, but you know, he gets out, he gives her computer, and she's like not even interested in him whatsoever. And when he's walking back to his car, he's like strutting, he's like moonwalking, you know, thinking he's all that just for talking to the girl. That part did crack me up. So I was liking this segment a lot. Now, you know, they do have the little spy thing hooked up to the computer. Now, Brady can access it to where they can see what the girl's doing inside her home from her computer, and you kind of see where it's heading. And you're like, okay, let's see what they do with this. And they start watching the neighbor girl. Of course, she takes off her shirt. You know, these movies, they have to show boobs. It's like almost the rule of VHS. They're going to show us butts and boobs. And when they do, she like takes off, she has a wig, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she has a wig," and she like snaps her arm. It makes like a and it's kind of like, oh, and I was excited. I was like, oh, like this is gonna be cool. And then snakes come out of her head. You know, she is Medusa, which sounds kind of exciting, but man, oh man, the CGI was awful. That is the one thing immediately it drops this segment a lot. Because it's like, man, we were going such good places. The banter was kind of funny. The delivery driver was funny. Brady super likable. And then it goes from that, and like Medusa like kind of like turns around and like sees that the boys are watching her. So she like invades their home and just like rips them all apart like very quickly. The segment ended like, it almost felt like it ended 40 seconds after they discover that she's Medusa. She's running around with her CGI like hair. I was kind of like, man, that kind of sucked. The ending sucked to that segment. I will say I still like it. It was entertaining enough, and it's probably the second best segment that I had watched so far. I mean, I liked it better than Shredder's, and I liked it better than Ozzy's Dungeon, because Ozzy's Dungeon just did way too much as far as direction. But you know, I liked where it was going. I just didn't like the ending. So this segment was okay. The last segment of this movie is called To Hell and Back. Okay, it's about two filmmakers. They're going to film this ritual that is going on. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Okay, when we got to this segment, I was like, man, we need a strong ending here. We really do. I need something to kind of pick me up a bit. And usually they save the best for last. Usually. Unless you're VHS viral. I always crap on that. I'm sorry if you guys like that, but not a fan. But yeah, going from that. So these two guys, they're recording this ritual. And there's a part where the guy with the camera, he like turns his head. And there is just a demon sitting in the corner of the room, looking over at them, smiling really big. And man, it was so subtle. Like I jumped. I literally did. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I just didn't expect it. I was expecting just something very cheesy. The very first sighting of this demon, it got me. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, that was really good. Um, then they're all freaking out, like all the people performing the ritual. They're like, "Oh, we gotta send that demon to hell." Well, like as they're performing their little ritual to send it to hell, it jumps out and grabs the two filmmakers, and the two filmmakers they wake up in hell. This was a very very cool segment. I enjoyed this one a lot. They made hell look awesome. With the budget some of these segments get, this one made the most of it. It seemed very grand scale, I will say that, like just going around, like they saw all these different demons. There's a part they look up in the sky and they see basically Satan, like Godzilla sized Satan up in the sky when the lightning flashes. All very very cool. They run into like a demon called Mabel, who's like a friendly demon. She's like, "Oh, fresh meat." And just like the way she talks to him, she's like, "Why do thou scream a lot? Why do you men scream a lot?" And she's saying like all these weird things, and she's kind of like the guide that is trying to get them back to the demon, because they know that people doing the ritual will end up calling that demon back, into the body. Like that was the whole purpose of the ritual. So they're like, if we touch the demon, we'll come back into the real world along with the demon when they put the demon into the body. Um, while they're going on this little adventure, it literally feels like Smeagol guiding Frodo and Sam in Lord of the Rings. I was getting those vibes. And kind of the banter between the two dudes, they're pretty funny. One guy's like, "I don't even deserve to be here," and he's like, "You sure about that?" And then the dude's like all paranoid. He's like, "Well, what'd I even do? What did I do?" And at one point he's like, "So Mabel, if I stole something that was like $10, do you think that's enough to send me to hell?" And he's like trying to figure out what he did was wrong. They're like carrying around like these like little pitchforks or tridents. Very cool segment. I enjoyed it a lot. They end up going back, and it's really funny because they do find the demon. They touch him. And Mabel dies, unfortunately. It's like, "Oh no, not Mabel!" And she's like, "Please put my name in the spell book. Please do that." And they're like, "All right, we will." And they touch the demon. They go back to the real world, and it cuts back to one of the guys goes into like his old dead body, I think, and like he looks up with the camera, and the other guy went into the body of the girl, and the girl's like looking down at him, going, "Dude, we made it!" Because it's the guy, and one of the girls doing the ritual, she grabs like a knife or machete and like just starts killing him. And then like another dude starts killing the other guy because they're like freaked out that like people actually came back. And as they're dying, you're just hearing them like talk about like, "Oh, how could this have happened? Now we got to call a cleaning crew." But as the one guy's dying, he does go to the spell book and he spells out with his own blood Mabel. So Mabel did end up getting her wish, which is a good thing. Mabel deserved it. She was a good guide, and she was a good character for this segment. So I will say, despite me kind of crapping on the whole segment connecting and shredding, I didn't think was very good. Ozzy's dungeon, I didn't like where that went. I do think there are some better segments in this one. It is not as bad as VHS Viral. I saw some comments saying that, "Oh, it's on par with VHS Viral." It is not. I enjoyed different segments in this movie. Is it as good as 1 and 2? No. Is it as good as 94? No. But it's like somewhere in the middle between Viral and 94. Whatever that lies. At the end of all these, I'm going to rank these anyways. And after some time passes, I'll be able to rank them a little better and, what segments have aged better in my mind. But yeah, that's been my review of VHS 99. If you agree with me, you can tell me in the comments. If you disagree with me, tell me in the comments. I know a lot of people like Ozzy's Dungeon. When I was done with it and I had formed my opinions and written down everything, I was just seeing what other people were saying. A lot of people like the suicide bid, like I did. There was a lot of people. Almost everyone loved the To Hell and Back one. But one thing I think that my opinion contrasts drastically with the public. A lot of people liked Ozzy's Dungeon, which I did not. That one was almost bottom of the barrel for me because I just didn't like what they did with it, the direction of it. It felt messy, felt weird, felt like they didn't know what they wanted to do, so they threw like a bunch of things at the wall to see if anything would stick. But yeah, that's my opinion. So if you think differently, comment below, tell me what you think. Please give this video a like because it helps out the channel. And if you aren't subscribed, what are you waiting for? We're covering VHS. Come on, join us. So yeah, this has been fun. We're going to go to the next one. I think the next one's called like 85 or something. So this has been 99. We're going to do 85 next. And until next time, guys.